ACMCIA, Ike, Tanishquelawan, Quit Nolast, Meetsap, Quitwilum, Tanatamok, Tanawhelmok, Slewatash, Homatwium, Skounshov. Greetings to our honored guests and my dear ones. I have good feelings in my heart to see all of you today. In our language called Hakamitenum, I welcomed you to the territory of Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish nations. On behalf of the Pacific Legal Education and Outreach Society, I'm welcoming you to the National Network of Legal Clinics of the Arts Forum. Thanking all of you for being here.
Thank you, Chief Leah George Wilson, for that beautiful welcome. I want to acknowledge that Pacific Legal Education and Outreach is located on, and I myself live and work on the ancient and unceded land of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam nations. Thank you for joining us today at the virtual forum for the National Network of Legal Clinics for the Arts, and to our special opening keynote, Pivoting to Digital for Writers and Literary Arts Organizations. How do writers get paid in today's digital world? How does the continued emergence of digital dissemination affect a writer's ability to control the rights of their work? Anecdotal evidence suggests that the pandemic has pushed book sales up by about 5%, according to BookNet Canada. But maybe that's only because we're all reading dystopic fiction. Are writers now expected to be performers at Zoom launches for their books because of COVID restrictions? What might all of this mean for the present and future of contracts and agreements for writers in Canada? I am very pleased to be joined today by three excellent and informative and very smart and experienced people. Dina del Bucchia is a writer, podcaster, literary event host, editor, and creative writing instructor. She is the author of the short story collection, Don't Tell Me What to Do, and 4 collections of poetry, including, most recently, It's a Big Deal. She is the artistic director of Real Vancouver Writer Series and hosts the podcast Can't Lit with Jen Suk-Fong Lee. You can find out more about Dina at dinadelbucchia.com. Dina, thanks for being with us.
Hi, it's great to be here.
And also we are joined by Shelley Youngblut, CEO and creative ringleader of Wordfest, located in Calgary, Alberta. Shelley and her team do some of the best literary programming around, and that includes upcoming events with some of the who's who of the writing world, including Thomas King, Jordan Abel, Ivan Coyote, Rachel Kushner, and my understanding is that there will be a broadcast of the conversation Shelley had very recently with Jeff Vandermeer. I think that's happening tonight. You can find out more at wordfest.com. And Shelley, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, we have Martha Rands. Martha is the CEO, legal director, and creative visionary for the Pacific Legal Education and Outreach. Martha has been working as a lawyer with artists and creators for many years, including many writers and literary arts organizations. We've had lots of conversations about this stuff over the years. Thank you, Martha, for joining us. Okay. Dina, I'm gonna hit you up first. Thanks for joining us. So you have come in, you've published a bunch of books during the digital revolution. And you've also been a writer and an event coordinator, curator during the COVID scenario, for lack of a better word. What do you see as the biggest challenges that writers have had to face in the recent past, but maybe specifically in the last 18 months?
Thank you, Sean, and thanks to everyone for being here. Yeah, I've written a bunch of books, so obviously I'm an expert on everything. No, that's not true. But I think in being part of the writing community and what I've experienced myself and what I've spoken to my fellow writers and other people, the biggest challenge lately within the context of what we're talking about today, pivoting to digital, I would say is just like how we're feeling and how that's affecting how we can work. So, from like very severe depression that people are experiencing to a more general malaise. I think that part of it and how we're trying to find the energy, strength, motivation to keep moving is one of the toughest parts, because it really feels like you're more isolated than ever. And writers talk about that a lot, because most of your work you're doing alone. And so it's pushing us further into that space. And I think that is, I almost was going to swear, but I'm going to keep it PG for this panel. Okay. It sucks. And so I think that is, to me, the biggest challenge. Like, and I know there are tangible things that can be done about it, but I also think it's really tough to figure out what those tangible things might be if you don't think you have the resources, the support, and the ability to ask for things and receive them, which writers who are accustomed to rejection don't think that.
Fair enough. And also, part of the pivoting to digital as a title is emphasizing the notion of adaptation. So how does an art form that is based in 3 dimensions in books and bookstores, readings and live events, and meeting your audience physically, signing their books. Shelley, in your line of work, working with Wordfest and being the creative ringleader there, adaptation has been a big part of what you have done since you landed with Wordfest. And I know that, tell me, has the pandemic situation accelerated that change? How has it affected your work?
Well, thank you, Sean and Dina and Martha, and thanks to all of you for being here for this. I think it's a really timely and important conversation we're having, because everything is changing. No one knows anything, and it has definitely just gotten so much faster. So I like innovation. I like the idea that you move with the times, you move, in our case, with the audiences. So we're very audience focused. And our role has always been that between the book being written and the book being read, we're that exclamation point in the middle that draws the writer and the reader together. And so we don't create or publish the books, nor do we sell the books. What we do is highlight that connection between writer and reader. And so for us, we've been trying in every way that we have in our toolbox to make literary events exciting, to make them accessible, to make them the kind of thing where you feel like it's almost like idea jazz, that if you weren't in the room when these events happen, you've missed out on something really special. And then we see the book as the t-shirt that you leave with to remember this incredible moment in time. Now, obviously, when the pandemic hit, we couldn't do that anymore. And so we saw an opportunity to suddenly grow an audience and grow connections outside of geography. And we became broadcasters. And so then the question was, how can you make this Zoom environment, these, squares of people who are not in any kind of physical contact with each other, just as potent and just as intimate? And so that's what we've been working on for the past year and a half.
Right. One of the things, obviously, that's on a writer's mind and a festival organizer's mind is monetization. It's a word that people enjoy using. And so, part of the formula, I'm sure, for many festivals is that there's gate receipts, and that folks are paying to be in the room at the time. How have you managed that, and how has the relationship with writers or publishers even changed as a result of having to go digital first?
Did you want me to start?
Yeah, sorry, Shelley. Yes, please.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So we made a decision that we were going to charge admission. We always had a certain portion of our live events that we would open up so that economics wouldn't be a barrier. But for the most part, we saw value, and that we thought that the audience would see value in it, and it became therefore a valuable thing. And we actually did very well with box office. All of that money went away. So there is no box office really online, because you're creating a whole different experience. You're having to bring audiences into it. What we did have was government funding. And because our government funding wasn't used for our festival or for our live programming, we made the decision that we would take all of that funding and put it toward artist fees. That would be our role in the pandemic, was to make sure that as many Canadian artists as possible got paid. And we've been able to do that because we're not live programming. My biggest fear right now is 2022, when we'll have a live programming stream that is, yes, funded by public funding, by foundations, and ideally by box office. We hope that'll come back. But my fear is, what do we now do about those online opportunities? And our online opportunities are things that we could never do live. So for example, Sean talked about, we've got Rachel Kushner, we've got Jeff Vandermeer, we had Kazuo Ishiguro. We were never going to get them to come to Calgary. And we don't want to lose that either. We feel like there's a valuable thing we can do to complement the live programming stream. And we're trying to figure out how to monetize it, not to make money per se, because we are an arts nonprofit. We're proud to be an arts nonprofit, but we're also an entrepreneurial arts nonprofit. So we want to make sure that we're bringing that sense, again, of excitement, that this shouldn't be something that you think of, I have to do this because I want to be a good, responsible Canadian, that you want to do it because you want to embrace ideas and curiosity and the literary arts.
Yeah. Similar vein for you, Dina, like curating and planning Real Vancouver. And I know you're involved in a bunch of other programs as well, but what has changed? What are the opportunities and what are the conversations that you've had with writers when you ask them to be a part of something that's virtual? Oh, you're muted.
Lots of writers are excited by the prospect of being able to participate in our events, similar to what Shelley has said, that otherwise would not be able to participate. So those conversations are great and fun, and people that have, that can't travel or have childcare that they might not be able to take care of if they weren't able to do the event virtually. For those writers, it's actually, these conversations have been great because this is offering them the opportunity to share their work in a way they would not have been able to before. And so that part of it is really exciting. Otherwise, like, the communication with writers hasn't changed a lot. We've been doing this for a while. We have our systems that we use, our templates to invite authors and to get them to participate in Real Vancouver Writers Series events. But what's changed is sort of every time, and I think all event organizers are learning this, you're adding something new to your template for your emails because you discover new problems. So that's what we're in this phase of. When you are producing live events, and you have been doing so for years, you've been able to iron out a lot of those kinks. So now we're continually ironing out the kinks of digital programming. And so the communication involves, asking people questions about their own access. What is their internet connection like? What kinds of things are not available to them that will make their experience easier? Like right now, my spouse works night shift and he just came in and made a big noisy snack, and maybe you heard some crunching noises. Like, you can't avoid that. A person lives their life in the same space they're doing their events. And so taking that into consideration and understanding what people experience in their daily life is now connected to what they're doing with their events. And events aren't part of their daily life because they go out to them, but because they have come into their space.
Yeah.
So thinking about that stuff as well, we've had authors that were literally in the middle of moving while they were reading at events, or either kids are coming in the room. Like, these things are things that I think before people would have said, this is unprofessional, but actually it's just what life is. And, we live in late capitalism and we're expected to work all the time and destroy ourselves to do it. So that's one of the things that's going to happen along with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Working all the time and spend the rest of your free time on Zoom is the day. So one question for you, I guess, Dina, I'll come back to you again. As a writer, how do you feel about the idea of you performing or reading your work and at an event like this or at a launch, and the notion of that video existing in perpetuity on YouTube or wherever?
I think for me, as someone who also has worked in other mediums, I've made book trailers, I have a podcast, I've done other recordings. So for me, it's something that I have a knowledge and an understanding of. And I'm going to gear what I say, the reading, all of those things to that. I don't feel bad that it's going to exist afterwards. Like, this is being recorded, but I don't know that we were told beforehand that it was being recorded. So this is a particular situation where if we're recording as an event coordinator, you need to be saying, hey, we're going to record this and this can be used again for this, 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 and this. Like, we need to be conscious of doing that, because I think writers do get concerned that their work is going to be, taken from them, used from them. And so having that stuff available, like collectively for all of us as organizers, I think is something that's really great, because this is, again, a new situation. We need to understand what that means. I personally am very cool with it, but I love attention and I want people to see me being awesome all the time. Not everyone is like that. A lot of writers are very introverted, they're shy, they're nervous, and even the concept of performing in general is stressful to them. So I think we need to take care with that part of digital programming, both like on an interpersonal level, as well as, and I'm sure, Martha could say more about this, but like a legal angle, just to make sure that, we have consent, we have permission from people to use their work if we're going to be using it in another form. And I think part of that is just like, for me as an artist and a person that doesn't want to infringe on other people's work, like courtesy, kindness, and just best practice.
Love it. That's beautiful. Shelley, before we get to you, maybe I'll ask, because Dina provided the segue there. Martha, what are your thoughts on this particular issue? Martha, you're muted.
Yeah, I think it goes well beyond courtesy and kindness, with all due respect. I think that we have to really challenge the idea of perpetuity. And the reality is that, an artist, you may have a writer who's willing to have their work to perform and then streamed in some fashion. They may not afterwards like the stream, right? Like, there could be sound issues. There could be any number of other reasons why they actually would prefer not to have the content made available in perpetuity. And I think that it really requires all presenters to think about what they're doing, and also to rethink some of the old ways of doing things, in that why would we ask someone to do something in perpetuity anyway? Most releases that I've seen use language like in perpetuity. Most writers sign contracts today in perpetuity as if there's a physical object rather than a digital file that is then printed on demand and made into and published. It's a very strange world that on the one hand, we're used to everything changing constantly, and some of the choices that have been made around contracts have and work and business conditions haven't changed, in my view, nearly enough, because I think now we need to give everybody the flexibility to be able to, maybe you stream something now and you don't make it available as a monetized stream until the writer has seen it and said, oh, okay, you can do it for this. Also, as opposed to automatically doing that and simply putting something up, particularly where in some circumstances a writer may be reading from work that is not yet published. And so that might pose an issue. Sorry, there's a phone.
Beautiful. It's live.
That might pose an issue. So, but you know, I think the perpetuity issue is an issue, is a concern. I'd like to see us really move away from trying to own everything forever, and opening doors and what are windows in the movie land, you know, in the film world, to different ways of distributing content, so that people like Shelley can have an opportunity to do what you're doing with the subscription service, and really invest the money and know that you have, for example, exclusivity, but that perhaps that exclusivity, I don't know, but maybe the exclusivity is for a limited period.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I've gone to some online events, more comedy-based things, where they will then let you know when you buy and those are ticketed events, that when you buy your ticket, if you're unable to watch at the time of streaming, you have up to 24 hours to enjoy the recorded stream. And I've always thought that was a great way to go. And that also sets up a contract, not just between the artist and whoever is producing the event, but also with an audience. So an audience then also gets to have that understanding of what the relationship is they get to have with the work, and for how long they get to have that relationship.
Yeah.
And that
the expectation isn't that they have it forever.
Yeah, and that they might have an opportunity to come back to some other event with the author at a later date. So in a way, it's a kind of share the wealth. It's an, you know, oh wait, I saw what was his name? The Devil You Know, Charles Blow, his talk for UBC, and that book is so interesting. I'd love to be able to see him again. I wouldn't necessarily want to watch the same thing again, though. And it really, I think it opens up some real possibilities for authors to have book tours without actually having to leave home too. Shelley,
Yeah.
do you have a?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Suddenly somebody seems to be drilling outside my house. So if you start to hear, it's like it's live. I don't know who it is or why, or else we've got a really, really aggressive woodpecker. Anyway, so this is really interesting. All of this, we've been thinking a lot about this. So we do not ask writers to read. We don't do that. This is conversation-based or storytelling-based, but primarily it's conversation. And think of it more like an interview on cue, where we're giving an author, we're giving them an hour-long showcase, professionally produced. So that's the other key part of this, is we make sure that the sound quality is first class. We make sure that we do pre-event tech checks with them. If they don't have the proper lighting or microphones, we supply it, because we really are looking at this as a professional experience, even though we're MacGyvering it always, because we're just literally a very small team of people, but we want to do the best we can by the writer as that sense of connection with their audience. So we try to stay away from the idea that we are in any way profiting on the work. Our job is to sell the work, really, and to sell the author to their audiences. So we're kind of a middleman there. And in terms of our subscription, what we're trying to do, and again, I want to make it really clear that if an author says they do not want the work, the interview posted, we don't post it. There always is that flexibility of opting out. It should be a co-creation. That's what we're aiming for, is that we are co-creating this environment together, and that we supply what we can so the author doesn't have to and the publisher doesn't have to. That's what we're trying to do here, is just be a good partner. Our subscription is $26. We make no money, but we have to charge something just to start to establish what is a decent price that people might be willing to pay. Think of it as a Netflix that makes you feel good about yourself, but $26 for a year, it's not that much money. And we don't know after a year of experimentation, which is what 2022 will be, what the landscape will look like, at which point we've been talking to agents, we've been talking to writers, we'll be talking to audiences, we're talking to publishers. We'll bring that information back. We can all then have an informed conversation and then figure out best practices. Because I think the thing that's key about all the people that you're seeing on your screen, and ideally those of you in the audience that want to be part of the arts, we're in this for the long haul. None of us are going to come in and take advantage and leave, because this is a small community. Your word is your bond. And if you develop a bad reputation, you won't last. And if you develop the idea that you are there as a predator, you don't deserve to last. And so I think that we have to, at some point, listen to each other, look at the roadblocks. And I'm as interested in this conversation as anyone, because I don't know what the answer is right now. But I think we have to try it and kind of see where we wind up, and then eliminate some of the obvious things. So for example, for a poet or a performance artist or a spoken word artist, their work is the performance. I'm never going to own that performance. They should get paid every time they perform, but I can, help promote to a larger audience the conversation that informs that performance. That's kind of where we see ourselves fitting into the conversation.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I wanted to echo something that John Deegan from the Writers Union mentioned in the comment threads, just that the union is seeing these distressing terms and practices, including a waiving of moral rights and a perpetual term, exclusive rights demanded, damaging the notion of a writer's future success or longer term work. Martha, have you seen those same things in your practice?
So, geez, this unmuting. I need a t-shirt. Don't forget to unmute yourself, or a sign there. Anyhow, yeah, all the time. I mean, I am a vociferous complainer about moral rights waivers. There's only one place where they're marginally appropriate, and that's in the film business. And there's a variety of reasons for that, which I won't go into, but under no circumstances should anyone sign a moral right, be required to sign a waiver for something like a streaming or an event like what we're describing. I think that every writer, every artist is, the money's not the issue. It's the relationship with the audience and the control over the work. And those are both critical parts of what makes up actually a good relationship. So you don't actually need to worry as much about a contract when you have a good relationship. And good relationships are based on clear expressions of respect and not requiring. Often these provisions that are like the ones John described are often come out of boilerplates that have no place in this environment whatsoever. You don't need to, and I do see film templates used quite a bit in this space right now, because for whatever series of reasons, some of the people that perhaps could have been producing template language for their members or otherwise haven't really figured out themselves how to do this, in part because it often involves other rights holders, meaning that, in the music world, you used to deal with SOCAN. Well, now suddenly you've got to deal directly with a number of other rights holders. You can't just rely on the license for the music in the room. And that presents a lot of challenges, like Dina, you described, for small presenters. I think that we're living, I think I wanted to respond to what you were saying, Shelley, just to tell you about an event we're doing in June with Jody Prosnick. It's going to be the Pivoting to Digital Music Edition. And Jody and two colleagues, Amanda Trossoff in Toronto and Francesca Fung, have created an online school as a way to address precisely what you've just described. And they've been MacGyvering as well. So I think there's going to be, over the course of this series, some interesting parallels that we can also draw from to perhaps create some of those best practices that I think we're all striving for. And maybe we can all come back together in the fall with a discussion around the various best practices that we've worked out. And we have created a template right now. It's intended for music festivals, because that's where I started. It's been amended for dance. I haven't gotten to the literary one yet. But the idea is that we'll start to develop some of the examples of language around exclusivity, exclusivity, the idea of a window, the idea that you don't need this forever. And something that is going to concern people, which is afterwards, they may think differently when they see the final product about it being made available at all. And even the most, open everything advocate, Brewster Cayley, who's responsible for the Internet Archive in the United States, if he's ever asked to take something down, he just takes it down. He's an expansive copyright minimalist, if you will. I think John might have a few words other to say about that. But leaving that aside, he's never left something up that where a writer has requested it to come down, ever.
Yeah. We're having a great discussion. Thank you all for joining us. I want to, I know time's short, so I want us to push a little bit further. One of the things, I'm a bookseller. I've been an independent bookseller for most of my life. I know Dina is a bookseller as well. One of the things that happens when you work as a bookseller is you get to see the inside of how the sausage is made, and sometimes it's not great. But one of the things that we mentioned earlier is print-on-demand technology, digital files, suddenly physical book. And it gets me around to the thing that I've talked with Martha about many times in the past, which is the notion of reversion of rights. Martha, can you just comment on what that means and why it's important?
Maybe I just stay off mute. Actually, maybe this is a good point for Dina to tell the little story of the Insomniac Press.
Blind items.
I'll just quickly cover it.
Yes.
Yeah. Here's the Coles notes of what happened to me in publishing. And lots of writers have similar stories. This is not unique to me in any way. And a lot of writers who published with this particular press had this exact experience. I published a book in 2014, and I received a very small advance, submitted my contract. The book came out. The book was late initially, and that was, just like one of those things that you're like, well, books are late. Independent publishing is tough. And then it came out, and 2 months after the book came out was the last time I ever heard from my publisher again in the history of hearing back from a publisher. So earlier, I tried to make contact a few times. I was unsuccessful. And then I was just like, you know what? Is it worth my time for, like, this year? Do you know how much I made from poetry? I got a check for $8.93. So I was like, is it worth it for $8.93 for me to continue to pursue this? I can't even buy a 6-pack of beer for this. So no, it is not. And earlier this year, there was actually proper journalism surrounding the exit of the new editor that was taken on last year and the books that were supposed to come out this spring, which were all canceled because the editor basically came forward and said that there's no feasible way for us to produce these books. There seems to be, again, it hasn't been fully explored. There seems to be other people in my situation who were never given even their royalty statements, let alone royalty checks. And so now it seems that the press is dissolved, even though that is still unclear. It's very clouded in mystery. So yeah, this whole time, you know, I have my advance was $200. So I guarantee I earned that out. And so that's where we're at. Yeah.
And the reason I asked you to tell the story is partly because it's a very common story. And you know, the publishing work is a risky business at the best of times, in small press especially. And the reality is that you know, when a company is insolvent, it's not like there's automatically you're told, unless there's a monitor appointed and you're advised, you may never know that the company has gone out of business. You may not know that the company was sold to another company, which is an issue that comes up way more frequently than you would know. And in like in the case of the Disney situation, that the bunch of authors who had their work used by Disney, where the various companies were sold, and so they've been collecting royalties from all these films, but they haven't been distributing it because those are liabilities that they say they aren't responsible for, because they were the successor to the insolvent entity. And there were issues like that around another, actually a major Canadian press. It wasn't McClellan and Stewart. It was out here. It was a West Coast guys.
Douglas and McIntyre.
Douglas and McIntyre. Okay.
Douglas and McIntyre. And some of the catalog went over there, and those guys were fine, but then everybody else was like, where is my stuff? And so this is why I'm always looking, the first provision I look for in a contract, maybe not the first. The first is usually the copyright. The second is usually termination. The third is reversion rights. And I like to see that there's a reversion rights provision upon insolvency, or other particular things happening. For example, not getting royalty statements over a successive period of time, such that you could argue that the contract has been frustrated at some level. And then the artist, the writer, has the rights revert to them, which is, you know, the funny story that Elizabeth Wyszynski told me once about, you know, having in the back of the Cinque Mille, you know, all the books that she would get back from all these defunct publishers, you know. I think she might even have been impacted by OWL. I can't remember now. That may have been where that came up, the OWL insolvency. But so reversion rights are really important. The difficulty with reversion, though, is that they often don't take account of where you also see reversion is where the books have gone out of print. Well, in an on-demand environment, books don't go out of print. And so one writer who was working with a publisher out here, she was in Quebec, wasn't getting royalty statements, had figured out that the book was no longer being sold by this publisher, had an opportunity to have it published elsewhere because it is a particular kind of book and it is in French, and was effectively being prevented from doing that because the new publisher would not do it without her getting a reversion of her rights back from the original publisher. And that agreement was 15 years old. And it took us finding her a pro bono lawyer who could send a really nasty letter with the big firm letterhead, because they had sent letters and they had the writers union involvement. They had done everything short of getting one of the big boys involved. And it was only when they got the big boys involved, where the threat of litigation might well have been real, that she was able to finally get the rights back. And that's that also speaks to, you know, the sort of notion of perpetuity, which still permeates the book business.
Yeah.
So that's the long answer to your short question.
Yes. Thank you. So it, you know, gets it back to the notion of books, getting books into people's hands. Shelley, you must have thought about this. Moments ago, you said that the important thing is to sell the books, and that getting books into people's hands as a result of the conversations you have with them is important. And also that people are attending your events and experiencing those interviews from far away. I'm sure your analytics tell a very interesting story. So how do you have a bookseller? How do you, have you thought about what the future of that looks like? Because I have, and I don't know what the answer is. So what do you think?
Yeah, we are imagineering kind of in a vacuum. So Sean, I'm dying to talk to you about this. We are big supporters of independent booksellers because, again, we're about connection, and there is such a strong connection. They know their audiences, they know the authors. You know, it's about community. It is very hard. It's easy at a festival. You know, when you're doing a local event, we would sell at our spaces. So 140 to 680 seats. 95% of the people who bought a ticket showed up. 50% of those people bought a book, full price. It worked, and it was going to Owl's Nest and Shelf Life. So it was a perfect business situation. Everybody in the ecosystem was doing well. That all went away online. So we still work with Owl's Nest and Shelf Life in Calgary. There's another bookseller that didn't want to be part. We would have enabled them to be part too, but they asked not to be part of it, which is their choice. I'm working right now on trying to talk to the independent booksellers and see if we can establish a network so that we have somebody or somebodies in each region who are affiliated with each of the events, and that we direct our audience to them. We are embedding it in our website. Ideally, I want to work with the Canada Book Fund to make this a really seamless experience. I have worked with Indigo on books and ticket events. Shipping is a real challenge. Working with a major retailer is a real challenge because they're too big to care to the extent that we do.
Yeah.
I know that they want to, but for whatever reason, there is a caring gap and an immediate solution gap that is a problem for someone like us who wants to solve things and make sure that that connection doesn't get broken. So Sean, it is the missing piece in the digital space. And ideally, if it's working, the author gets the book royalties. Like, it should work, that they're buying lots of the t-shirts.
Yeah.
It isn't there yet digitally.
Yeah. So, okay. National network of independent bookstores supporting live events across the country. Right.
Let's do it. Let's do it now. Let's get it going.
Yeah, because Dina, Real Vancouver, we have readers from Toronto and right across the country who buy books at their independent shop who would love to support that, right? So there must be a way. Shelley, I think you're onto something there.
Yeah, and we're trying everything. So I'm talking to Martha Sharp at Flying Books right now, because she's trying to do something similar out of Toronto. Anybody who I think all of us at this point now have to, again, co-create and come together and figure it out on all these different levels. And the numbers matter. You know, if we're all off in our own little worlds doing things, we'll do them well, but they're not big enough to have a real impact. And so we need that impact as, you know, cumulative knowledge, but also cumulative numbers. And then we can go back to some of the funders and get cumulative funding.
Boom.
I think
Dina,
also, sorry, I just wanted to jump in because I also think we talked about being able to get other writers. And for us, a lot of writers we work with for Real Vancouver Writers Series are published by independent presses, and lots of people don't live in cities at all. And so being able to actually reach out, I'm from a small town, you know, I really value try to cultivate the arts in those areas. And bookstores were definitely one thing for me that was a big deal. Bookstores, library. So being able to also reach out outside of these urban centers that we know people know there are independent bookstores here. So to find those other spaces where near people live, you know, we have definitely had writers in the last year that are from small areas that would not be able to travel here. And there are bookstores and booksellers near them that would love and appreciate support. And so that part of it too, I think is really crucial.
Yeah.
I want to add that one more thing that's really important is the independent bookstores need to have the same Canada Post mailing opportunities that other businesses do. They are paying full freight right now, and that is a barrier. And then we also track all library holds through the CPL system. For any author we track them before we announce an event, the week that we announce, the day of the event, and then a month after the event, so that we can again show that there is a cumulative effect of attention paid and showcases of an author. And then we're trying to figure out for 2022 how to take big authors to smaller places and actually film it into programming that we can then distribute to larger audiences online. So turning the whole digital live thing on its head and go the other way. So we do small, intimate outreach that becomes then broadcast to the world, if we can figure out how to stay alive in 2022.
One step at a time, Shelley, one step at a time. Dina, do you want to finish that off? Are you good?
No, that was good.
Yeah, no, it was great. So we are approaching the end point, and I just wanted to thank everybody again for being with us. We have a question from Haley from earlier on in the thread, and it's sort of a great place to go here towards the end. And the question is, how can a starving artist, in quotes, of course, protect intellectual property rights on an ongoing basis? Has the law really caught up with analog versus digital? Intuitively, it seems the average artist can't make a living. Is it different in different provinces? And I know Martha wanted to speak to that, so go ahead.
We go again. Unmute yourself first. Okay, so there's a lot of questions actually in that one series of questions, and there's a lot of possible answers. I'm not going to dismiss the question about artists making a living. I think that's ultimately it's the elephant, I think, in every room in the work that we do, and I'm very conscious of that. And actually, it's why the copyright minimalists call me a maximalist, and the copyright maximalists call me a minimalist, because I think that we have not kept pace with digital developments, and we're using outdated language and terminology and contracts and so on. And I think we have a tremendous opportunity, oddly, with this moment to really start shifting the paradigm under which a lot of artwork, including writing and all literary work, is re-understood, both its role and also how it's distributed, how it's consumed. I hate that word when it comes to book reading, but okay, I have to go with it. And I think at some level, it will be audiences and people who interact with those audience who actually end up shifting that the most. Our role, and it was amusing when you're talking about a national network of booksellers. The reason why we're a national network of legal clinics for the arts is exactly to help to support, to provide some kind of infrastructure from coast to coast to coast that will actually make it easier for an individual, whether it's Dina or any of the writers that anyone deals with, to actually have that first contract reviewed by a lawyer so they understand and are educated about what the darn things mean. Frankly, the language in these contracts, even in the ones that I might work on as part of this project, there's still going to have language we don't understand. It's up to us to explain it. And most of the lawyers that work in the various summer legal advice clinics, and our staff lawyer, who, if they're here, River, that will be you, are going to be the ones who are going to educate people about this is what reversion means. This is what a representation is. This is what copyright is. We don't talk about intellectual property rights. I stood up at a writers union event, John, I think it was probably 10 years ago. And I said, if you're looking at a contract that refers to intellectual property rights and doesn't use the word copyright, you're not looking at a contract that was drafted from the point of view of the actual work of publishing a book in today's world. Nobody talk, I mean, not nobody, sure. You might copyright and other related intellectual property rights. Sure, the words are there, but it's always going to be about copyright, and so it should be. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, then, and you happen to be in BC, come to the artistlegaloutreach.com website. You can go to Artist Legal Advice Service in Toronto. You can go to Clinique Juridique des Artistes de Montréal. They have resources there. And hopefully by us working together, we can better respond to the needs of writers and small publishers, because a lot of the small presses are started by passionate people who just want to publish stuff, and they're great people. I know the people at Talon Books and Arsenal and Mona over there in Salt Spring.
Fertig.
Thank you. You know, these are all people who love the written word, and no one wants to see them. It's an ecosystem, and we want to see all the boats lifted. So that's the hope of the project, is that we'll start to get more things explained, more events that will share information, and also expose you to the possibility that, geez, you know, coming soon in Winnipeg will be a clinic run by the University of Manitoba Carrie L. Vickers Biz Law Clinic, which is going to be hopefully adding artists and arts organizations to their mix very soon. So we've already seen the expansion of services with the first few months of this project. And I just encourage you, Haley, to, if you're in BC, to come to us or to seek one of us out, and so that we can hopefully at least ensure that no starving artist goes to sleep without actually, perhaps they might have a few nightmares after reading the contract, but at least they understand it, and I would hope be able to negotiate a better outcome.
Yeah.
And that's also the important thing to remember for any of the writers that are listening, is that people like Dina and like Shelley really just want to hear what you need. And if you can't say it, they won't know it. And, you know, and that's a big part also of what you will learn when you get an opportunity to speak to someone like me or many of my colleagues, is we'll help you to figure out how to ask for, geez, does it have to be in perpetuity, or to refuse in the case of that moral rights waiver, and to bring in the writers union to say, that's just not done in this environment. So bugger off.
Yes.
I also just wanted to comment on the idea of the starving artist, because I have all these jobs, and I just want to say, like, I've been doing this work with Real Vancouver Writer Series, with lots of other projects, and starting things from the ground up. That's why it's really difficult, because like, this is the first year that I'm being really paid to do this job, and having to do other work and manage all these other things, it makes it really difficult as an organizer to be able to provide for the writers that you are supposed to be supporting if you yourself are not supported. And to me, that's another huge part of access, and another huge part of what moving forward, I hope we can change. Like, it's a big problem, and I'm sure there's lots of people in the chat here that are attending today that are paid, they think fairly for their work, and I'm sure there are lots of people that aren't. And I always want to make sure that people know, you know, yes, I am doing this work, and a lot of it I am not properly compensated for, because it is really difficult to build these networks and systems. And, you know, I have the title artistic director, but I'm a dirtbag sitting in my 1-bedroom apartment. Like, I think the ideas we have about what people do for a living, and what that actually looks like outside of this is really important. And so it's tough. You know, I want to see the money go to writers, so that's why we pay them. But it's tough to be able to do this work and to know not only are other people paid to do similar jobs at a way higher rate than me, but that to be able to get to that stage, the work that I am doing, and that Sean and other people that are part of the organization, you know, putting into grants and other funding and fundraising, has to get done before we can then have the time to be like, okay, let's work with Martha, like, to find time to access resources amidst everything else that you're doing. So not only am I getting these $8.93 checks, but this other stuff as well. So I think looking at that too as a building block for everything that we are. I am very well dressed dirtbag. That's true. I know I'm putting my money into one particular area.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So we're right up at the top of the hour, and I feel like this is a good spot, but I do want to give some shout outs. First of all, Mona Fertig is who Martha mentioned earlier on, runs a Mother's Tongue Press. Fantastic West Coast press, does a lot of poetry and anthologies and other work. Highly recommend checking them out. Shelley, can you tell us what's happening? I know I mentioned it earlier on today, but what's happening tonight, and what makes it special?
Oh my goodness. Well, special to be in the eye of the beholder. We are launching a new original format called Big Generous Brains. It's a series that will highlight just the most interesting, tasty brains out there in publishing internationally. It starts at 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. So there's the whole country. It's free. So, and Jeff Vandermeer is in fact the first guest. But we're doing 2 shows a week. So we air 2 shows on Tuesday, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, every week this month and next month. So if you want to check out what Wordfest does, it's there. And I'd love to get your feedback and help you make those connections with these authors and these works. So thank you for that, Sean. I appreciate the shout out. And I just want to say very quickly, I'm on Treaty 7 territory. I'm also in the province of Alberta. We desperately need you, Martha, to help our artists who are often forgotten in our current political landscape. Universal basic income for all people to have dignity, including artists, but also all people. And thank you. I really appreciate being part of all of this.
Amen to that. Dina, what's coming up on your radar? What's going on?
Real Vancouver Writer Series on June 27th. We have 6 amazing authors. It's super exciting. I just put out a weird chapter for free, because you know what I love? Giving away stuff for free. It's digital chapbook. You can find it online.
Yeah.
And that's all I want to say. Listen to my podcast if you subscribe. It makes me feel good. It's called Can't Let. You can access it at cantlet.ca. Next up, we have an exciting interview with Sarah Berman, who wrote about the NXIVM cult. So pretty fun.
Sarah,
but also upsetting. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dina. I want to give a shout out to our recent person who has joined us here on the PLEO team, River Shannon. Are you out there? Is your audio on?
Hi there. Yeah,
How you doing?
pretty good. Very, very excited.
River, what have we tasked you with here at PLEO? How are you going to help?
I'm going to help Martha get a clinic up and running so that we can offer this kind of empowerment and support. And so excited. I have so many artist friends, including my partner who's a poet, and every single one of them I bring up PLEO to say similar things to what Shelley and Dina have been saying, which is, oh my goodness, we need this, please. And so I'm just so delighted to have the opportunity to support Martha.
Yeah.
And
yeah, thanks, River. Welcome to the team.
Yeah.
And Martha, final words.
Yeah, we're absolutely thrilled to be able to be the first place in Canada where we have hired a full-time staff lawyer, which is pretty incredible. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to nurture, and I mean that, the next generation of legal minds to support the sector. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks, Sean, for being who you are, and for Shelley and Dina, who we finally managed to cajole onto something, which is yay. And thank you all for joining us today.